we could share this later also. So, and also all this data has inherent properties that are often ignored, and that creates a big problem in future. Yeah, data, the sensitivity of it, who owns it, where is it current, is it not current, who has access to it, and all of that good stuff. All of that good stuff is needed to make sure you have a proper control about the estate, and you know what's happening in your data plane. Yeah. So in this talk, I'm going to just focus on understanding where to know your data and to make sure that you have absolute information about it, all the metadata and everything, so that you understand what's going on. And from there on, you can proceed to protect and prevent any data losses. Yeah. I'm going to focus on the unified data governance part of it. And my friend Glenn here would be focusing on the other part from Microsoft 365 as a service for Purview. Yeah. Quick fact, Apache Atlas is the source project for Microsoft Purview, and how this was developed as an inspiration from there. Yeah. Data governance with Microsoft Purview is basically divided into 4 parts on its catalog. So take anything in and share it through Microsoft Purview so that you have proper control and you have all the metadata around that information. And it's done with cataloging it and sharing it in a controlled environment and applying some policies and insights. They're moving into a new portal, which is interesting, but it's still in beta, so probably not available to everyone. The problem is that the Purview account is made by everyone. So if there are more than one Purview account, that means there are no governance rules around it. They're trying to take step, making sure that this is all tenant-wide. It's still in beta. How does this help? This helps by enriching your data, by giving you glossary items that could be assigned to data, so that everyday data could be organized into categories and could be recognized more. It's classified, whether it's sensitive data or no, is it passport information, is it credit card information and such. Sensitivity label, this comes from Microsoft 365. How sensitive it is, like you apply for the email, right? The email kind of gives you information of is it non-confidential, is it confidential, is it highly confidential. Similar labels applied to estate-wide data. The best part about this is you could also apply managed attributes, but this thing, this product is not just for Microsoft. It goes way beyond Microsoft data stores. So as I showed you before, that it could go to AWS and Amazon and Google stores also. Yeah. So not just that, in SAP and more than that. So most popular data sources, right? And now I take you to the portal. After we're done, we're going to talk about the permissions a little bit, just to introduce you. So this here is the Microsoft Purview, and I've created it in a resource group just as any other resource. It's basically available like you would create a storage account. You could just search for Microsoft Purview and just hit next and create it. It doesn't require anything else except that information, just a name. But when you go there, it gives you a portal which you could go to. Like for this example, this is mine. Open a portal, and this is where I go. A quick go through about this. It has a cataloging feature, so all the data that's collected is accumulated in a way that it's inherently organized based on how much metadata do you put it into the data sources, right? And based on that, all of the data is organized in a way that is searchable, like a search engine sort of. So I've done a couple of inputs, and that's why you have some information here. But you can categorize from data sources, the collections that we'll be defining, the collections and the classifications, if you have any, of the data, right? That's data catalog in general. Data map is where you map data and you organize your data and you share your data from there. So for example, I have 3 different things. So I've created 3 different containers for it. But big organizations, they might have many more data sources. You might want to organize them in a different way. Like, for example, all SQLs under one container, all storage accounts under one container. And these can go to 5 levels. So it would be nice if you don't go to 5 levels, but it still helps, right? What I'm going to show you is these two mostly, and the management part of it, how you could go ahead and create connections and credentials. The data policies are applied when you share files, and you can have more policies around it that could be involved, how much, who is capable of doing with your data. Pretty much where, who, how, and what situation. It's pretty straightforward. And insights is basically giving information what's happening with your data. How many glossary items, or how many classification, how many sensitivity labels, which one of them are being used more, which one of them are being used less. Yeah, the pretty exciting stuff. The first one that I would go ahead and I would go ahead and show you is that you could go ahead and register a source from here. But for that, you could create a collection to make sure your things are organized. I've created 3. You could create one more, new one. Yeah, that way you know what is kept where. Yeah, that sort of stuff. And then for the same collection, when you're trying to organize, you could register a more source. I could go ahead and create a storage blob, or yeah, let's take database. Storage data lake. Yeah. You select the source, you select which subscription are they. It's pretty much straightforward because it goes ahead and does it in the background. But before you do this, you have to make sure that Purview, it generates an identity, a managed identity that has permissions to the storage account that you're trying to read, because that's needed to make sure that it can go ahead and churn data from there. This is the storage account that I'm going to go ahead and read. And this here is the managed identity that my Purview automatically created when it was created. I just go ahead and map that to a storage permission. And after that, I'm going to go ahead and just map it to one of the collections. And that's it. That's how you register a data source. But I've already registered it. So this one here, that's it. This is something that it would look like. If you see here, it has a lot of information. I've created one more scan, but you can go ahead and create a scan to make sure your Purview understands what data is it dealing with. Yeah. The name doesn't matter. The runtime doesn't matter, because this is Azure provided, like DevOps pipeline. It could be from DevOps, but if you want to run your own integration runtime, that's also possible if you have a specialized machine for it. And what I'm doing is I'm telling it that I've used your identity, a managed identity, to read it. So that's what that is. And go ahead and check the connection. If it's working, the collection remains the same, and then I continue, and it goes ahead and tries to give me an interface where it says, which one do you want to go ahead and check and make sure I read that data. So I'm just going to go ahead and uncheck these two. I have one that has a lot of data for COVID shares. This here, I'm just going to read that. And this is essentially to show you that it could be granular. You don't have to read all the data in case there are compliance issues, which most probably would be there for the data that's being shared around. And all of these, the reason why it's easier to scan through this is because Microsoft has devised a couple of steps, a couple of algorithms, per se, a schema to make sure that data in the storage account could be dealt with appropriately. So you don't encounter issues like certain files could not be read or certain schemas could not be read. So and all of this is based on Microsoft's own experience through customers. You can have them at once or schedule it if this share churns data around, right? And just run it. And it might take time depending on how much you have there for churn, right? It might take time, but when it's done, it would give you information around what exactly is in your data store. And from there, you can move forward with it. Similar thing can be done with other stuff like like SQL Server. I've deployed another SQL Server for the same thing. I actually deployed a couple of resources that I wanted to take a look, but some of those are here, right? I have a SQL Server that I'm going to map, but the SQL servers are a bit tricky, so it might not be easy to get you permission through managed identity. There are other ways to do it too. That's one thing that I wanted to showcase, that you can manage credentials through Key Vault, which is very important to make sure things are compliant and the permissions are compliant. So you don't get situations where keys and identities are just out in the open because, yeah, why not? Right. So what you could do is first manage and add a key vault. So what you do is just the simple step that we did for the storage account. You give it a name, get to the subscription, got to the storage account, and that's it. That's what you do. Of course, you have to make sure that, like we did for the storage account, the key vault also has read permissions to it. I'm using access policies here. I'm not using the RBAC controls because for some reason the administrator of the key vault was not responding in the same way for the permissions, and I had very short time. I did not want to jeopardize the demo. So that's why I'm going for access policies, but the same could be done by RBAC controls also. So you would use key vault administrator and key vault secrets user. This here is equivalent to secrets user. What I've given is my managed identity get and list. And what I've given myself is all permissions because I have to create a secret. What I did was I created a secret for a SQL password, which is called SQL secret, right? And then I went ahead, after I've given the permission, I add the key vault here. When you do this afterwards, it's easier for Purview to go ahead and fetch credentials from there. So when you do this, and after that, you add a credential and you tell it that this credential would be called something, and it would be of type SQL authentication. You could give the username and then you select the key vault and the secret name. Now it would be able to fetch information from there. But if you do it afterwards, giving the permission, it might feel like that it happened, but it would never happen. Yeah, that it would always result in a failure. So from experience, I wanted to share that it might be important for you to make sure permissions are in place before we go ahead. Yeah. So the same thing happens here. I go ahead and register a data source. I could go ahead and do Microsoft SQL database. I'll keep losing stuff. Azure SQL database. Yeah, there it is. Right. Same old steps, selecting the server, selecting the endpoint, selecting which collection do you want to have it in, right? And then you register. And right now, nothing happens because all it's done is put it under this container. You have a passive source right now. Magic happens when you start to scan it. That's where SQL's tables would be scanned altogether. You could have with Azure runtime, that's fine. But now I select the database that I've registered from Azure subscription. I select the credentials that I've created in the credential part. Yeah. And I go ahead and tell it, I'm not going to do lineage. I'm going to show lineage a little bit later. But lineage is basically showing the path that your data followed. Very, very important to understand how your data was created. No dark data or unclaimed shares or sources. It's very important for that. Right? And I go ahead and give the credential and the collection, and then I test if the permissions are correct. This is just a preliminary step to understand that things are moving in the right direction and you don't have permission issues. When you do this, a scan would start. I would ask you, I have these tables. Do you want to scan all of them? And I'm like, yeah, right now I do not care. I just go ahead and want to demo that this scan sort of works, and there's a schema around it. So all the data sources that are registered there for reading information, they have schema attached to it. So it's it's properly vetted data sources, which are increasing in number every now and then. So there's a proper schema for it. You could go ahead and do this and run with it for once, and it goes ahead and runs this. For curious mind, yes, you can create your own schema also ideally, which is possible. We did it for one of the files, but it's possible to create schema for that also. As long as you know your file type, file structure, it's possible to create schema around it so that Purview could digest it. Yeah. When this completes, you would end up in a catalog. So if you do this, you would see that the tables are from SQL. Yeah, the information about the queries of the databases are from generation to data lake storage. It's possible to filter it through data sources also. And what you do with this information is up to you. Right now, it's categorizing it, but you could go ahead and edit all this information that is attached there. So it's possible to go ahead and edit any of these databases, these information sources, and enrich them to make sure that, for example, it's possible to go ahead and give it the country names. You could select anyone that is applicable here right now. But the point here is that all of these items, they need more information. So you could go ahead and put more information as and when needed. The best part here is this thing that gives you incredible control about the validity of the data. So in case the data is expired, stale, and it's no longer valid, do this. And you uncheck this, and that would signify that the data is no longer valid. You might want to use it, you might not want to use it, depending on the use. But it's not something that company would take responsibility for. A huge control on the way you could go ahead and work with it, right? The other thing I wanted to show is another capability that's very strong here. It's lineage. Data Factory is a very used tool to create data and make sure that the data is manipulated into from one form to another with pipelines, right? What I do here is I create a pipeline essentially just to copy the information from one source to another. This is the, This here is the pipeline. What it does is it takes this database of Excel sheets. It goes ahead and copies it to a Parquet file in the same storage. So I'm going to take from a number of files from Gen 2 data storage, which looks something like this here. So CSV or TSV file, tab separated files with information, a lot of it, and I'm going to merge it to Parquet file. This is a very common data science technique that people do, and they merge information and then go ahead and work with it. We're just going to go ahead and do that and make sure all of it is merged. When we do that, there should be a Parquet file available on this. Yeah. So that's what I was looking for, and this task should be complete in a few minutes. When it does, I could go ahead and map Data Factory, and this could be done before and after. You could just go ahead and do this and select the proper data factory that you want to map. And this time things happen in the background automatically. When you do this, a managed identity is given permission to this Azure Data Factory, and it goes ahead and gets information of privileges to fetch information from Data Factory essentially. So this is just a connection name on the subscription, and it says it's connected. If we go back to the Data Factory, the same connections would be available there also. So linked services here, Microsoft Purview. You would see that it's linked here. The connection is made by the fabric of Azure in the background. So it's essentially connected to it with proper permissions. The magic happens here. When we go to the collection and we go ahead and check that data lake is available here, and we go ahead and try to check just give me 1 second. Source type, and we go to Data Factory. It would show you the pipeline that has been run. The main thing is here. It shows you the asset, the data property that has been created through that copy operation. But this here is the meat of it, where it shows you where did the data come from and what is it being created. So this way you can follow up with your data and make sure that data is always current, plus always accounted for. Where did it come from? Who created it and why was it created? And that's one of the things that you could do here. If you edit it, you could give contact information about who to contact about that data and who is the owner for that data. It's very important because most of the time information just is out there and nobody knows why is it created. Yeah, something like that. Cool. The last thing that I wanted to show, all of this is interesting, but the actual control comes from making sure that whatever is being shared is funneled through Microsoft Purview, funneled through products like this. Yeah. Funneled through products like this to make sure that these things, they're available and information is centralized in one place, right? So what we could go ahead and do essentially is I've created 2 resource groups, 2 storage accounts, sorry. One is for sharing and one is for receiving. So the storage accounts here that are available, the storage account that has the name sharing has a container just to showcase the possibilities as a folder and has a picture of Homer Simpson, right? And the storage account that has possibility to receive a share. Now you have to understand this received storage account could be a storage account from somebody else who wants to work with the data. And sharing is the storage account for another person who wants to share data. These are 2 different persons. Storage account by shared is by person X, received is person Y, and they want to communicate their information, but they're going through the funnel of the storage account right here. Yeah, we go ahead and just to show you there's no containers here. Yeah, that was my previous attempt. I'm just going to delete this. Yeah, delete. Right. There's no containers here at the moment. And it's very easy to do all of this. All I have to do is give proper permissions to read. And what happens here is that as long as that person has ability to read from that share, they will be able to read it. If they don't, then that's the similar permission issues. Your purview doesn't interfere with that permission model. So the person has to have permission to access that information for them to access it. We're just facilitating, making sure it's funneled down at a central place. Yeah. Sharing. Go on. I create a new share after I'm selecting it, share 01. And it gives me that one folder that's there. Yeah, I could just share that one file also. That's possible. So I'm just going to share a folder here, the folder that was there, not the whole container. Yeah, the names could be the same. That's fine. And I go ahead and transfer it to an email who probably should have been in your organization and should have ideally permission to go to Microsoft Purview, at least read permission, so that they could collaborate on the same platform. This is my email. So essentially what will happen is it will ask me to do the same thing. Yeah. So when I do this, a new share is created. And what happens is that this new share is pointing to from where the share is created from. And if I go to share invites, there should be an invite here. And this invite needs acceptance. So I need to tell it where do I mount the share. This is where I go to the received part of it. And I go ahead and select that share, storage account received. I give it a path 40. This is new. So what happens is that it's managed to map that container there as the one that I deleted. It creates a folder, it gives you the privileges, and then it's attaching that storage. So your information is mapped directly in place. It's not moving information. You are not becoming responsible for it. What it's doing is just giving a symlink or a, as they say in the Linux, or just mapping it to another storage account. Yeah. So when this is done, ideally, if I go to this folder, it should map to a storage account, and that storage account should have the permissions and that folder of Homer Simpson. Yeah. So we go to the container again. Yeah, 40, which is probably still being mapped. Yeah. When that is done in a couple of minutes, we'll probably have Homer Simpson in the other container. There should be a folder here that starts with A something, and then we would go ahead and have a container there. Yeah, and yeah, while this is happening, I'm going to take you through the permissions. The permissions are very important for governance, and that's why I wanted to have a minute or two for that. Essentially, we have a collection administration that just defines the collection, the folder structure of how the organization happens, assigns roles of who accesses which container. Yeah. The data source administrator is basically a person who goes ahead and maps these data sources, identifies what kind of privileges are needed, and all of that good stuff of working with the actual teams who want to use this. Data curators are the peoples who work with teams, asset manager, and map these people to make sure your content is rich. And so are data curators in a way. Actually, data curators do more. They assign classification and glossary items too. So basically, these two roles are data enrichment people. And then there's data reader, people like you and me who want to just go ahead and go about our life and use it. Right? When this attachment is done, we go ahead and check out the folder structure again. And yes, of course, there should be Homer Simpson. Yeah, that's my analogy of Simpsons there, right? And that's basically Microsoft Purview for you. Now, although it seems like this might be a one-shot bullet to everything, but it isn't. It takes time, and don't try to go too detailed. That's my experience. If I bog down into detail, this thing never finishes up, and nothing starts from there. Gathering or accumulating information takes time, so it might help to start from superficial level and not plant in too many details. Education and training is very important because people are used to using their own sources. People are used to using their own shares. This is, of course, a moving target. Use easy language, balance convenience and security, and most of all, make sure your leadership is on board. That's very important because when the leadership is on board, they can persuade people around to work in a more standardized environment. Yeah. And yeah, that brings me to the end of my presentation. And I want to hand over to my friend, Glenn. Yeah. Glenn, I'm assigning you the privilege of.
Can everybody hear me? Wait, can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you. Yes.
Cool, cool. That's a good start. Yes,
Can you
my
share
name
screen?
is, yeah, not yet, but soon. So, yes, so means that you can share you can see my screen, right?
Not yet. No.
Sure. Yeah, I did something wrong here. Screen 2. Share.
Yeah, they started now.
Yeah. Cool. Yes, my name is Glenn Nygård. I'm a colleague of Moit. I work as a lead architect in Atea and within data risk and compliance. Been working with Microsoft Purview for 365 for many years, and now recently this year has been a quite hectic year because everybody wants to run Copilot. So
And just give me 1 second. I think Zoom might log us out in a minute. So just keep that in mind. You might have to rejoin. Okay.
yeah, okay.
This is the information to everyone. We are not, this is Zoom forcing us to go to Pro and stuff. So we're still figuring things out. So please join back if in case we disconnect. Okay.
Okay. Yes, where was I? Yeah. Been working with formerly compliance, Microsoft compliance for a couple of years, and now it's highly actual because of Copilot, and everyone knows about that. What I wanted to talk about today is data lifecycle management, which is mainly a retention in 365. You probably know all about this, the information protection pillars in Microsoft with know your data, protect your data, and prevent data loss. When it comes to retention and storing of data, deleting of data, it belongs under the govern and your data section in this one. There are two main action with data lifecycle model is to retain content or delete content. The purpose of retain content is to prevent permanent deletion and remain and keep data available for e-discovery and searches and permanently retention. And it's easy with delete content because if you wanted to, if you have some regulation and other requirements that need to, you cannot save data more than, for example, 10 years, financial data in Norway, you can automatically delete it with this. There is different functions with retention policy and retention labels. Which is the main function with the lifecycle management for data in 365. You can enforce retention and deletion setting with both retention policies and retention labels. You can start retention or deletion based on create date or last modified date. That's for both of them. You have this possibility to use adaptive scopes, so you can target users groups based on adaptive attributes and things like that is supported on both retention policies and retention labels. And you have the function when it comes to automatically apply a retention label or combined with a sensitive information protection that is supported only by retention labels. So on. This is a typical how to set up a retention policy. You scope it to who can manage their retention policy, and you set the policy scope, means that you can either have a static or adaptive. So you can apply it to static groups and users or adaptive users and groups. And then you decide the retention or deletion period, and then you configure what happens after the retention or deletion period is expired. You want to keep it or you want to delete it. So I'm going to show you a quick demo how you actually create a retention policy. Data life management. Retention policy. Choose a name. Here is the section where you scope. Choose where to apply this policy. This one is for Exchange only. See the different type of storage where you can apply this retention policy. So this is the way where you decide what to retain content after it's deleted. Say for 7 years. Replace it to this case. Replace it to 1 year. And this is the deleted content based on when you can choose when the item is created or when it's modified. Done. That's the question of retention policy. So, and then is retention labels. The labels can be applied to explicitly emails, documents, sites, and things like that. It's not a policy that is applied. You decided whether you want to retain the data or you don't want to retain data. So that's you can decide what's going to happen during the retention period. Then you decide the retention, is it retained or is it deleted? And then what happens after retention period? You decide if you want to don't delete it, to keep it or delete it. Retention label is a little bit different configured, and in this case, I wanted to configure it through records management. It's the same if you configure it through data lifecycle management or record management. You have some more options when you configure it within record management. File plan. So you can have some columns, see different types of departments is applied to. In this case, we create a new label, give it a name. This is covering the non-disclosure agreements. The description for admins. And here is the file plan descriptor, because here you can you can combine it with and label it with a different type of apartments category and things like this. Is for archiving. Choosing a business function, you can create your own functions. Go through every one of this. So now we're going to see what this label is going to do with the information. Are we going to retain this forever of a specific period? Or are we going to delete it and force the action after a period? Or just label it? In this case, we're going to retain it for a specific period. And the retention period is based on when it's last modified. It's going to choose to have it retain it if the user is deleting it. And what's happening? This is actually what's happening after the retention period is expired. In this case, we're going to mark it as a record. And then we have some different configuration. We can either delete item with the information automatically when it expired. We can change the label to a different label. We can run a custom or a built-in Power Automate flow on the information, or we can deactivate the retention setting. Then the user can manually remove the items and delete it. You don't have any governance of the information. In this case, we're going to start a disposition review. It means that it's going to be sent into a flow that people's going to approve that it's either retained or deleted. I'll talk to that a little bit later. So actually, you create different type of stage of reviewers. This one you start by automatically stage approval that we set for 14 days. So it means like within 4 days it needs to be approved or be in a queue. Yes, and then you appoint these reviewers for the first stage. The second stage will be the record management stage team, which is a different type of function roles. This is the whole flow. So this is happening when the document has expired. Yes. So after that, I want to show you how to create this is create a retention label now, and I want to show how to apply it. And you have two ways to apply it. Is manual apply it, then the user can go in 365 and manually apply a document, and then you have the auto labeling function as well. So label policies will publish those labels I have configured. A little bit bigger. So I have to publish this label. Choose a non-disclosure agreement label. Static. I want to choose the locations I want to apply those labels to. Only SharePoint Classic, OneDrive, and my 365 groups. give the label policy a name. So now we're going to log on to SharePoint side, and then you're going to see how this is applied. Choose document, choose the label, and then pick up the label here. Say it's published to the users. See, record started is locked. As you can see here, it's you can see that it's actually locked by deletion. Try to delete it. It's not possible because you have a retention label that says that it's a retention period. That is the manual way to apply a label. Now we're going to go through an automatic one. So we publish it through an automatic label policy. So you have different type of how to choose the type of content you want to trigger with this label. You can choose to apply it with that to information sensitive info types that is has been defined. We are now going to show you a GDPR. This is a built-in info type, sensitive info type. For those that have been working with information protection, this is probably familiar to see these things. So I'll go back. And you can also choose to trigger trainable classifiers you also have defined. What we want to do is to choose to apply the content to that it has specific word or phrases. This is key query language. So we are having a query here, file name, which so information documents that has file name, non-closure agreement, or and file name called NDA. Choose the scope, choose the static, and we choose the where to apply this label. And then we choose the auto labeling policy, which retention label that should be applied when documents that has these names is saved in 365. Choose the label non-disclosure agreement. So now I'm going to show you how this is applied automatically. We are going to upload a couple of documents. Which has this NDA name in it. You will see that right after it's uploaded, it will automatically get the retention level. Yes. Lastly, I want to show you because when I define this label, I defined it at disposition review stage. This one can be managed through record management. For example, we have a non-disclosure agreement that is catched by finance data. We have a flow with different type of stage reviewers. We are searching for exchange. So this is cases. This is actually information that has been set into this post-decision review by this auto apply label. So now we have different type of choices here. Review can choose to approve the disposal, and it will be deleted, and you can choose to relabel it with another label, or you can extend the retention period, or you can add another review. So I want to take a look at this one. In this case, we want to approve the disposal. Another case is I want to see that how to relabel it. So this one means that it has been wrongly labeled, and we choose a new label for it. So this is a typical archivist function. Lastly, this one is not going to disposal, so they want to extend the retention period of this document. Last function is to ask another one to take a look at this information and see if it's I cannot decide if this is approved for disposal or is it going to new labels. Ask some help. Additional reviews. Finally, it's you have an overview of all the disposal items. So we'll quickly export this one and see how many documents has been run through this case. Yes. So I have a couple of real life examples of retention policy sets and retention level set. Often used retention policy is to get something quickly in place or to be retained. For example, if you have a new setup tenant and you want to say that you want to be retained within 10 years, you can apply that by a retention policy. Or you want to delete all emails after a specific time to prevent hoarding or saving information. The third one I've seen a lot that they delete Microsoft Teams chat after 1 month, and that is to encourage people to use more channels and keep information there. And also retain SharePoint files for a specific time to prevent actual deletion. That one can all be done by retention policy wide in Teams, SharePoint, and Exchange. Explicitly, this is explicitly examples with retention labels where you can label specific type of information with managed NDAs and contracts, delete files containing personal information on schedule that comply with your privacy regulations. You can comply to financial documents for 7 years that keep invoices, for example, one regulation, and ensure that the high business value isn't accidentally deleted by retention label. The last one I've got a lot of cases for recently with Copilot and transcripts and meetings summaries that they wanted to use retention label with automatically function to govern transcript in Copilot and Teams. The main two things about auto-apply content is like we recommend to trigger content with sensitive data, which is by create a retention level with the lifecycle settings, and apply lifecycle setting when we find content that matches sensitive information type in email or files. There is some recommendation of quickly start up with the query-based auto-apply labels for Exchange from SharePoint and OneDrive. You have these Teams meeting recordings. You can trigger it by query languages with the Prog Media and Prog Meeting. I have one I can show you here, which has this function. This is auto labeling with retention. You see, I use condition and matching on this key query language here. For SharePoint and OneDrive accounts and 365. OneDrive, you have to manually enable OneDrive as a storage for meeting and transcript recordings. Yeah, it automatically pro level. So last, I want to tell a little bit about these different types of combination of retention policies and retention labels. This one can be used together, and there is some principle of retention of what it takes precedence. There's 4 principles. Retention wins over deletion. The longest retention period wins. Explicitly wins over implicit for deletions, and shortest deletion period wins. I have a couple of examples for this one. For example, the first one, retention wins over deletion. And the email message is, for example, subject to our retention policy for Exchange that is configured to delete items 3 years after they're created. And it also has a retention label applied that is configured to retain items for 5 years after created. The email is retained for 5 years because the retention period wins, and that will take precedence over deletion. Number 2, the longest period wins. It's possible for a retention period of 5 years in a retention policy, or a label that has a retention period of 7 years. In a retention policy has label, it means that it will be retained for 7 years. Explicit wins over deletion. It means that if you impose a label manually, it will automatically wins. The last example is the short deletion period wins. It's a document in a user OneDrive is subject to 2 retention policies. The first retention policy is scoped to include user's OneDrive account and has a deletion action of 10 years after the file is created. The second retention policy that is imposed is included in user's OneDrive and has a deletion of 7 years after the file is created. The document will permanently be deleted after 7 years because the shortage retention period for the items these two scopes is based on that one. So it's different example of this type of principles. Last, I want to give you some hints about where we're going to send out this slide as well, about some training and documentation, also license information. Yes, Moit, this is what I have. Do you have any questions or something?
Yeah, thank you so much, Glenn. Yeah, that was it. That was basically us, and I hope you liked it. This is our first attempt to it, so we are planning to do more organized stuff, and maybe I don't know, maybe in a more organized fashion, more governed fashion, if I may say. Yeah. Um, when we say this, the prime motive is to make sure we meet like-minded people, professionals who are actually trying to do the same thing as us. Yeah, we can exchange ideas and we can exchange thoughts around it. For that, we started with creating an AD, not an AD group, actually a LinkedIn group, so that we could if we do not want to exchange our LinkedIn IDs, we could still stay in touch and meet at other meetups also, and this meetup also. And by that, I have already shared, and I'm going to share it on the meetup email also, to go ahead and please join our user group. If you don't want one-on-one contact, but that's also welcome. Please connect with each other. Please connect with us. We would love to see what you are sharing, and we would appreciate feedback on ours too. Yeah. And apart from that, one more thing. Uh, we we want to hear from everybody who's doing what in governance, and exactly what kind of stuff is going on in the industry. What are you working on? If you have if you have something exciting experience that you want to share, please, we could invite you to a talk here. Yeah, so we could have one of the sessions and maybe talk about what you experienced, why something worked, why something didn't work, what essentially did you achieve by doing something that was not in place, maybe. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna send this information on email also on Meetup. Yeah. And the group here is this on the chat. I think I mentioned that before, but this is the group here. And
the group, I would say that the group is for sharing experiences and
yeah, absolutely.
yeah. So if you feel free to, if you want to have some topic discussed as well, so we will cover.
And this is Glenn, and this one here is me. And I think I'll probably send it on text because it's going as an image. So this is me, and this is Glenn here. We would love to connect and talk more about what you are doing, and we're not the only ones doing things here. Yeah. Please reach out to us on direct messages if you want to, and we could arrange a talk, and we could actually get in touch more often, right? We're trying to organize a physical meetup too, but that's not as easy as we thought. Yeah, we're trying to do something around it so we can all meet physically and at least handshake each other and look in the eye and know each other a little bit, right? But yeah, for now, this was just it, and thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, it was. It's actually giving us more enthusiasm that people are interested in something like this. It was lovely meeting you. Anybody else want to say something? The forum is open. I think we have a couple of minutes, so
yeah.
if anyone
Petteri
wants to...
Leiviska here. Yeah, I can give a comment. So thanks for this. I think this was a kind of a nice and a good sort of run through overview, call it what you want, on the Purview family. I personally work at Tietoevry Finland, and I also have some touches with the Norwegian domain, so to speak, as well on my job. I work as a principal security consultant, and currently I'm sort of starting to have a look at the Purview family, data governance and compliance from kind of a concept owner role perspective. So definitely looking forward to exchange views and information, share topics with you. Moving on.
I think we will a little bit later also cover more when it comes to infrastructure as a code around Purview as well, and setup automatically setup of, for example, within 365, all this through infrastructure as a code, and do things like that. And
have another. Sorry, Glenn, carry on.
No, sorry. But we will also, when it comes to governance, we will also cover later this spring. We are planning to cover also governance when it comes to DevOps and things like more. It is quite experience on that one. So.
Good.
The next session, we're trying to have it around infrastructure as code. We don't. So I'm going to be taking an approach that I've taken with other clients. I'm going to try and make a presentation around it to share more around it. Glenn probably is looking at something too, but we'll spread the word when we have more information around it. And the same goes to everyone. If you have something that really hit the nail there for a customer, that's really exciting, and you want to share it with others. I mean, we all consultants mostly just work with companies and just move on, isn't it? There's not much scope of talking to people who work in the same domain. So if you have something exciting, please let us know, and we could all be there to hear you out. Yeah, share experience. That was all from me. I think, yeah. And Glenn.
Yeah, I want to also share experience about creating sensitive info types. That is, we are building a repo of different type of experience for that one. So that will be helpful to get some other experience of creating info types. Cool. That's all for me.
Yeah, that's all from me. And I think we could give you back our 15 minutes if you want, right?
Yeah.
On the meeting right here. Once again, thank you, everyone. I'll try to stitch the two recordings and post it. Have a good one, everyone. Take care. Good weekend.
Talk soon. Bye. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.